New evidence has just come out in the Nolan Wells case that proves that he was murdered by those three men. There was a pool party that took place after the island, and you can see clearly in Evan's Instagram post, Nolan is there.
And now over to the growing mystery surrounding the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. His family and friends now in mourning after he went on a 4th of July boat trip and never returned.
Witnesses have put out statements saying that an altercation took place between Nolan, Evan, and two other boys, and the boys proceeded to beat Nolan to death with a metal bar and urinate on him. And all those people there watched and did nothing about it.
His phone placed him on the island. The search teams went to the island. The investigation pointed straight to the island. But Nolan Wells was not on that island when he died. According to witnesses now coming forward, Nolan was not lost at sea. He was not caught in a current or swept away by water. He was beaten to death at a pool party while a crowd of people stood nearby and watched it happen. Every single one of them watching. And not one person did anything to stop it. And when it was over, someone made a decision. A cold, deliberate decision. They moved his body. They took his phone. And they placed both of them on Horn Island to make a murder look like a drowning. That is why search teams spent 2 full days looking in the wrong place. That is why his family waited by the phone, hoping he would come home. And that is the story the public was never supposed to find out. Who was at that party? Why did everyone stay quiet? And how did this cover-up almost work? Welcome to the channel. If you are a returning viewer, you already know that this is the place where the real stories get told. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now, like this video, and stay with me, because this is one of those stories that will stay with you long after you finish watching. Now, let us get into who Nolan Wells really was. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He was a black teenager from Mississippi, a football player, a son, the kind of young man who filled a room just by walking into it, the kind of person his family looked at and saw a future full of possibility. Nolan was not just a name on a missing person report. He was a teenager who had just crossed the line into adulthood, 18 years old, the whole world still ahead of him. He had his family, his love for football, and the kind of energy that the people around him felt every single day. Nolan Wells deserved to grow up. He deserved a future. And on the morning of July the 4th, he had no idea that the day ahead of him would be his last. July the 4th, 2026, Independence Day. For most people along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, that day meant fireworks, food, family, and water. And for Nolan and a group of young people, it meant getting on a boat and heading out to Horn Island, a barrier island sitting off the coast of Mississippi, the kind of place that feels completely separate from the rest of the world. Horn Island is remote. There are no shopping centers, no traffic, no noise, just open beach, warm water, and wide open sky. On a holiday like July the 4th, it is exactly the kind of place you would want to spend the day. And that is what Nolan and his group did. They loaded onto a boat, made their way out to the island, and spent the early part of the afternoon the way young people do on a holiday, relaxed, social, and completely caught up in the kind of easy summer energy that makes those days feel like they will last forever. Nothing about the early part of that day suggested anything was wrong. But then the afternoon shifted. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Nolan Wells was last officially confirmed to have been seen on Horn Island. 3 o'clock. The sun still high, the holiday still going on all around him. And after that point, according to the official timeline, there is no clear confirmed account of where he went or what happened to him next. Then came the boat trouble. Members of the group reported that the boat began taking on water. The bilge pump was having problems. The situation with the boat made it clear that the group needed to leave the island, and by around 4:30 in the afternoon, they began making their way back to the mainland. According to authorities, Nolan chose to stay behind. The official claim is that he decided to remain on the island, believing he would find another way back, another boat, another group heading in the same direction. His family never accepted that explanation. Not for a single day. And as the new witness accounts now show, There is very good reason why that explanation never sat right with the people who loved him most. Here is where everything changes. Up until this point, the story the public was given was straightforward. A young man went to an island. His group left. He stayed behind. He was reported missing. A search was launched. His body was found in the water near Horn Island 2 days later. That was the timeline. That was what everyone held on to. But that timeline has a gap in it. A significant one. And what is now filling that gap is something that was never part of the official public narrative, not until witnesses started coming forward. After the island trip, there was a pool party, a private gathering, not mentioned in the early reports, not part of the public conversation around Nolan's disappearance. A separate event that took place after the boat trip to Horn Island. And according to the allegations now surfacing, Nolan Wells was there. The evidence being pointed to is an Instagram post, an image allegedly connected to Evan's account that appears to show Nolan at that pool party, alive, present, and at a location that is not Horn Island. Not the water, not anywhere near where the search teams were spending their time and energy. Let that land for a moment. If Nolan was at that pool party after the island trip, then the entire foundation of the missing person search was built on an incomplete picture. Horn Island was not the last place Nolan was alive. It was just one stop on a day that continued well beyond what the public was told. The search that followed, the boats, the volunteers, the coastline, all of it was focused on the wrong location. Now consider who else was at that party. Among those present were Evan and 2 other boys. 4 people in total, at the center of what witnesses are now describing. Nolan and 3 others who had all been part of the same July the 4th group. The same boat trip, the same island outing. People who, from the outside, looked like a normal group of young people spending a holiday together. But something happened at that party that changed everything. The easy, relaxed energy of the day did not carry over into that gathering. According to the accounts now coming forward, the atmosphere at that pool party was very different from what the morning on Horn Island had looked like. Something shifted between those people. Something that started as tension and moved in a direction that should have been stopped long before it reached its end. What exactly happened between Nolan, Evan, and those 2 other boys at that party? That is the question at the center of this entire case. And the answer, according to witnesses who say they were there, is something that no one who heard it has been able to forget. Something was wrong at that party from the moment the tension started building. It was not the kind of energy that comes from a good day carrying over into the evening. According to the witness accounts now coming forward, the atmosphere between Nolan and the 3 boys, Evan and the 2 others, had shifted into something heavier, something uncomfortable, the kind of feeling in a room where everyone present can sense that things are moving in a direction they should not be going. Words were exchanged. Voices rose. And what started as a confrontation between Nolan and those 3 boys moved quickly from an argument into something physical, the kind of escalation that happens fast, before anyone has fully processed what is unfolding in front of them. 3 against 1. Nolan Wells, 18 years old, had no way out. The 3 boys turned on him together. And what witnesses describe next is not a fistfight that got out of hand. It is not 2 people losing their tempers in the heat of the moment. What witnesses say happened at that party was a group attack. A deliberate, one-sided assault on a young man who was completely outnumbered. And then came the metal bar. According to the witness accounts, at least one of those boys used a metal bar to beat Nolan. Not fists. A metal bar, swung with enough force and enough intent to cause damage that a body cannot recover from. Blow after blow landing on an 18-year-old boy who had done nothing to deserve what was being done to him. Now here is the part that is almost impossible to sit with. While this was happening, there were other people at that party. People who were close enough to see it, close enough to hear it, close enough to understand, in real time, exactly what kind of violence they were watching unfold right in front of them. Not one person stepped in. Not one person grabbed those boys and pulled them back. Not one person put themselves between Nolan and that metal bar. Not one person made the call that needed to be made while it could still have saved his life. Every single person at that party who was not involved in the attack made the same choice, and that choice was silence. And then, after the attack was over, after Nolan was already down and no longer able to defend himself, witnesses allege that those boys urinated on him. They stood over his body and degraded him. As if the beating itself was not enough. As if they needed to make absolutely certain that even in his final moments, Nolan Wells was stripped of every last piece of dignity he had. That detail is not just deeply disturbing. It reveals exactly what kind of contempt those boys had for his life. The three who carried out that attack bear the full weight of what they did. But every person who stood in that yard, watched an 18-year-old boy get beaten to death, and chose to say nothing, they made a choice too, and it was the wrong one. Every person at that party made a choice. And that choice is something I need you to weigh in on right now. Should bystanders who witness a violent attack and stay completely silent face criminal charges? Drop your answer in the comments below. This conversation matters, not just for this case, but for every case where silence protected the wrong people. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think the people who stood at that party, watched what happened to Nolan Wells, and said absolutely nothing should face criminal charges? Let me know exactly what you think. Now, back to what happened after that party. After everything that happened at that pool party, someone made a decision. Not a panicked, split-second reaction. A deliberate, thought-out decision. Because what came next did not happen by accident. It required more than one person, a clear plan, and the willingness to follow that plan all the way through. Nolan's phone had been with him the entire day, the way an 18-year-old's phone always is, and when authorities began looking into his disappearance, that phone became one of the key pieces of information shaping the entire search. The data connected to Horn Island, and because of that, every resource, every volunteer, every search team focused their attention on the water and the coastline surrounding that island. That one detail built the entire public narrative around his disappearance. But according to the witness accounts now coming forward, that phone did not place Nolan on Horn Island because he went back there on his own. The allegation being made is that the people who attacked him took his phone, along with his body, and deliberately transported both of them back to Horn Island after the attack. The island was never the scene of what happened to Nolan. According to these claims, it was where someone chose to leave him, to be found, far from the pool party, and far from the truth. Think carefully about what that required. Someone had to make the decision to move his body. Someone had to arrange the transportation. Someone had to ensure that the phone went along, knowing that its location data would point investigators toward the water and away from the party. That is not a reaction born out of fear. That is a plan built out of intent. There is a significant difference between those two things. And while that plan was in place, the search went on. Volunteers gave their time, authorities covered ground. The United Cajun Navy, a well-known search and rescue group, joined the effort, working the coastline and the waters around Horn Island, looking for a young man who, if these accounts are true, was never lost out there to begin with. Then, on the morning of July the 6th, 2 full days after Nolan was last seen alive, a park ranger made a discovery on the northwest end of Horn Island. A body, matching Nolan's description. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind was contacted, and when asked whether the body belonged to Nolan Wells, his response carried the full weight of what it meant. He said, and these are his exact words, "There is no reason to believe it is not him." Somewhere, Christine Wansley's phone rang. 2 days of waiting, 2 days of hoping, 2 days of watching strangers search the water for her son. And then, nothing left to hope for. Here is where things stand right now. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has stated publicly that they do not currently suspect foul play in the death of Nolan Wells. The investigation has been described as active and ongoing. An autopsy has been performed, but the results have not been released to the public. No official cause of death has been confirmed. That is the official position, and the Wells family wants no part of it. Their response has been clear and consistent from the very beginning. None of this adds up. Those are not words chosen carelessly. That is a family telling the world, plainly and directly, that what they are being told does not match what they believe happened to their son. Attorney Ben Crump has been vocal on their behalf, pushing for transparency, demanding independent scrutiny, and making sure that the pressure on this investigation does not ease up simply because time has passed. Because right now, there are things that still need to happen. The witness statements that have surfaced need to be formally documented and taken seriously by investigators. The Instagram post, the one allegedly showing Nolan at the pool party after the island trip, needs to be pulled, preserved, and examined as evidence. The full phone location history needs to be disclosed so that the public and the courts can see a complete, accurate picture of where Nolan was and when. And every single person who was at that pool party needs to be questioned. There is also a larger question sitting underneath all of this. Nolan Wells was a young black man. His family and their legal team have raised the question directly. Would this investigation look different if Nolan were someone else? Would the response have been faster? Would the official position be more aggressive? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones. And they are questions that Ben Crump has built an entire career around, refusing to let go unanswered. As of now, no arrests have been made. Not Evan, not the two other boys. Not a single person connected to that pool party has faced criminal charges. An active investigation and real accountability are not the same thing. And for Christine Wansley, that difference is everything. This case did not stay local for long. What started as a missing person story along the Mississippi Gulf Coast spread far beyond state lines within days. Thousands of people who had never heard of Horn Island before, who had never been to Mississippi, who had never met the Wells family, they started sharing Nolan's name, his photo. The details of what witnesses were allegedly claiming had happened at that pool party. Social media carried the story to every corner of the country. Online communities that follow cases like this one refuse to let it fade into the background the way so many others do. People were angry, people were grieving, and people were loud about both. At the center of all of it was Christine Wansley, who is now watching strangers fight for answers on his behalf. Her grief was real. Her determination was real. And the world, it turned out, felt exactly what she felt when she described who her son was. Here is the truth about cases like this one. When the public moves on, the pressure drops. When the pressure drops, investigations slow down. The people watching this video right now are the reason that does not happen to Nolan Wells. Do not move on. Every case like this one leaves behind lessons. And Nolan's case carries several that every person watching needs to take seriously. The first is group accountability. If you are ever in a situation where someone around you is being harmed, staying silent is not a neutral position. It is a decision, and decisions carry consequences, both moral ones and legal ones. The people at that pool party who watched what happened to Nolan and said nothing did not stay out of it. They chose a side. That is something every person needs to understand before they find themselves in a moment that demands action. The second is missing person urgency. When a young person is reported missing, the response needs to be immediate, not the next morning, not after a waiting period, from the very first hour. Time lost in the early stages of a disappearance can never be recovered. And in cases where foul play is involved, those early hours are often the difference between finding the truth and losing it forever. The third is digital evidence awareness. Phone location data, social media posts, and online activity are now central tools in modern investigations. But as this case shows, that kind of evidence can be manipulated. A phone can be moved. A digital trail can be constructed. Investigators and families alike need to examine digital timelines critically, not simply accept them at face value because the technology appears reliable. And the fourth is this: community pressure works. Public attention, strong legal representation, and an audience that refuses to look away have historically pushed investigations forward. Nolan's case is proof that the people watching have real power. Use it. We started with one simple fact. His phone pinged on the island. And because of that, the search went to the island. The public attention went to the island. The official narrative was built around the island. But Nolan Wells was already gone. If the witness accounts coming forward are true, then everything the public was told about where and how Nolan disappeared was built on a trail that someone deliberately created. And while search teams covered the coastline and Christine Wansley waited by her phone, the people responsible for what happened to her son were counting on that trail holding long enough. Justice in this case has one clear shape. Every person who swung that metal bar needs to be held fully accountable. Every person who stood in that yard and watched needs to answer for their silence. And every person who helped move Nolan's body to that island needs to face the full weight of what that decision means under the law. This investigation is still open, and the people watching this video are part of what keeps it from going quiet. If you believe Nolan deserves justice, share this video right now. Like it, comment, subscribe if you are new here, because on this channel, we do not let these stories disappear. His name is not a headline. It is not a case number. His name is Nolan Xavier Wells. Say his name.